Hello interwebs and welcome to my channel. I hope you're doing well. So for today's video, despite the fact that I am wearing a Star Trek shirt because I sadly don't own any of the Expanse shirts, which is honestly a deep moral failing on my part, I wanted to use this video to have an unscripted discussion surrounding The Expanse, my current favorite science fiction show on TV right now, specifically around the discussion of Marco Inaros, the main villain of the current season of The Expanse, and ask the question, is Marco Inaros right on that show? Is his fight for the Belter cause and how he has decided to go about doing it the correct one? Is he actually morally justified in his murder of millions and millions of people within the show? Before we get into the discussion, I should give you a quick disclaimer. I have read the books of The Expanse, so I do vaguely know where the story of the show is going to be going after this season. Even though the show has taken a few, zigs and zags here and there, it's generally been following the plot of the books. But for this discussion, I am only going to be focusing on the actions that we have seen by Marco Inaros within the show itself, and sort of that context. And while I will be talking speculatively about the implications of some of his actions, and those, speculations may or may not line up with what eventually happens within the book, I am not going to be spoiling anything specifically from the book. So if you haven't read the book, if you haven't, gotten any idea of what happens after this current season of The Expanse, don't worry, you are safe here. However, you should be all caught up on the show up to episode 8 of season 5, because that is when I'm recording this video. I'm recording this after having just seen episode 8 of season 5. So let's discuss Marco Inaros and his plan. So for anyone who's seen The Expanse, you generally know that the political makeup of the Expanse universe is there's Earth, which all humans came out of. It's a bountiful, the most bountiful planet in the entire solar system. There's abundance of resources. It's very overpopulated on that planet, but generally it has a governing body that is fairly strong, has a slightly weaker military than its main rival Mars, but is generally a very well put together, very well resourced government. Then you also have Mars, which, like I said, is maybe under-resourced, is a planet that is trying to terraform itself. It's definitely got this sort of like, we're going to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. And it's also a very militaristic society because they feel like they need to protect themselves from their rival Earth. So it's a very militaristic society, all about like, we grit our teeth, we assign people roles in this great project of terraforming Mars. And we have the Belters, which is all the people that essentially live on space stations out in space, gathering resources for both Earth and Mars, and have no direct governing body, and have been taken advantage of for years and years and years and years and years by both Mars and the Belt, these sort of stronger powers. And we know for the first 4 seasons of The Expanse that the Belters have generally had only organized resistance movements, different cells, this group called the OPA, as well as a couple other sects as well, that are fighting back against, in sort of like little terrorist militia guerrilla groups against the Earth and Mars governments. But generally, the Belters have no organizing body. And there have been some groups that have tried to consolidate Belter government, namely around the character of Fred Johnson, who was a former Earth military man who became sympathetic to the Belter cause and started to help them fight back, as well as Anderson Dawes, who was the leader of an OPA cell that gained more and more power. But generally, Belters still do not have a single unified centralized government by the time that we reach season 5 of the show. Now, what is particularly interesting about Belter culture, and sort of the culture that Marco Inaros comes out of, is because they have no centralized government, they have no centralized location all that much. There are several different bigger space stations, but they have no like main hub for the entirety of Belters. They have become a very decentralized type of government. And we see this reflected within the OPA itself, the terrorist guerrilla group, however you want to categorize them, the sort of main political entity within the Belters, in that they have a very flat hierarchical structure. They are, for all intents and purposes, anarchists. And I use that in terms of the actual meaning of the word anarchist. People who are critical of hierarchical bodies and believe that any hierarchical body, anyone who wants to have power over others, needs to justify itself. And we know that the show is explicitly making that connection, given the fact that the A in OPA is sort of the anarchy A that we associate with the idea of anarchism. They've sort of explicitly drawn that connection. And this makes sense. Again, like I said, Belters are very spread out as a group, and it would be very hard to have them have their own governing bodies. Not impossible. You could sort of elect representatives from each different space station or community and, form a government and have an elected leader and that sort of thing. But given that Earth and Mars have been sort of putting down any governmental efforts by the organization, and it's easier to sort of protect yourselves by sort of spreading out your leadership so that no one person's in charge, and if they ever get captured, no one will know all of your secrets and be able to take, your entire organization down because of that. It generally makes sense that they have this structure, but it also mirrors the culture of Belters as well. We've seen within the Belters that they have this belief in sort of Belter identity that sort of transcends personal identities, that they are all Belters first, rather than being unique individuals first. That's not to say they don't have, individuals' self or anything like that, but they definitely have a stronger community focus. And again, we see this within the decisions that are made on the show by any type of group. One of the specific ones that I am thinking back to was within season 4 of the show. We see that Marco Inaros, who is sort of the one of the groups that is sort of out on the edge in that season, he's sort of doing his own thing that not a lot of the other Belter groups agree with. He is captured, and all of the Belter sort of segments of the OPA come together, including one of the main characters, Drummer, to vote on whether they should kill Marco Inaros or not. And every single person gets an equal vote and say in that, despite the fact that some of them may have done more for Belters. And they choose not to kill Marco Inaros. It's a very flat decision-making structure. We also see this within how they form families as well. We see in season 5 that Drummer is a character who forms a polyamorous relationship with a bunch of people on her ship, and she also calls them a family, whether they are in that polyamorous relationship or not. They are her family. She sort of sees the community of the Belt, the community of her family first over individual actions, which is very different from the much more militaristic, individual-focused Earth and Mars. So where does that bring us to Marco Inaros? Well, Marco Inaros ostensibly argues throughout the entirety of the show that he is fighting for Belter independence, the Belters to be seen as equal with Earth and Mars, which is the goal that a lot of Belters are fighting for. It makes perfect sense. They want to be seen as being an equal weight with Mars and Earth because they have generally been taken advantage of for decades.
Under the protection of the Free Navy, the society and culture of the Belt will begin again and remake humanity without the corruption, greed, and hatred that the inner planets could not transcend.
And so it makes perfect sense that Marcos would appeal to this sense of community, to this communal sense, this anarchistic sense of the Belters. However, his actions show slightly different takes on that idea, because he unilaterally decides to attack Earth in one of the most devastating attacks that Earth has ever felt, sending huge asteroids to hit Earth's surface, essentially just giant nuclear bombs killing millions of civilians on Earth's surface, devastating Earth as a planet, and weakening their standing right at the moment where Mars is also losing its standing within the sort of universe as well, because of the fact that the ring gate has opened and there is much more hospitable, already terraformed planets that people can live on. And so the idea of terraforming Mars makes a little less sense now, because people can just go to another planet instead of having to terraform Mars to live there. So both Earth and Mars have lost a lot of power because of Marcos's attack and just the elements of the world that we live in. And Marcos has just taken this huge step to elevate the Belter movement to be seen as, having their own navy, having their own independence, having their own thought. And he also makes gestures out to other elements of the OPA saying, hey, you can join a free navy. Everyone has a choice. You don't have to agree with me. As long as you're a Belter, you can go about your way. If you disagree with us, I'll fight you. But if you want to join us, you can. And if you don't want to join us, I'm not going to be happy about it, and I'll, probably make some snide stuff on the side to sort of get rid of you. But objectively, we're cool, even if, we're not on technically the same side, because I respect the Belter community ideal. Now, two things with this. One, the argument that the show makes is that Marco's attack and murder of civilians was wrong, and I believe objectively that it is.
I'm a fighter.
Strength makes us who we are.
Killing people doesn't mean you're strong.
I don't necessarily believe that acts of violence and terrorism are inherently wrong, especially when you are trying to fight this fight of, you've been underrepresented, you've been taken advantage of for years, that you need to use terrorist tactics, very harsh tactics in order to get recognition. Generally, I would say try to avoid killing civilians on the whole, but I also don't believe, I'm not someone who believes that any act of violence is inherently completely immoral. I don't think it's right or wrong necessarily. There are shades of gray. And sometimes that's all you can do in order to have your voice heard. Sometimes violence is the only way to have your voice heard. This is not an advocacy for, doing that in real life necessarily, but just saying that situations can be more nuanced and sometimes not all violence is completely unjustified, or the better way to probably put it would be to say not all violence is completely, you can understand why people feel the need to commit violent actions, even if we don't necessarily agree or feel like their ramifications or what happens with them is morally right or wrong. However, he devastated Earth. He basically set off tons of nuclear missiles on the planet, basically forcing Earth to respond in kind. Earth is going to have to respond violently. He has forced a military action by Earth, as we start to see within the 8th season of the show. He's kind of forcing their hand to attack also Belter civilians, which is going to radicalize people to his cause, and he knows it. He is willingly doing an attack so devastating that it will have to warrant a response that he knows will get other civilians on his side killed, but will ultimately benefit his power in the end. So, first off, we see that he is not only willing to trade lives of the opposite side, but his own side in order for his own personal power. And that's the important thing with Marco Inaros, because as I said, the OPA is a very anarchistic, communal-based society and, group, and has sort of that ideology baked into their society. But Marcos wants to gain his own power. He wants to centralize power behind him. And we see this not only on the sort of macro political level, but on the micro level too. As we see with his relationship with Naomi Nagata, his former girlfriend and mother of his child, Philip, she states that everything that Marcos did is making you an extension of him, that he only sees you as your value and worth to him.
I didn't know how strong I was until after I left and realized I was nobody to your father. I was just a piece of him. My life was his, my dreams were his. Everything I thought and did was to please him.
The same thing happens with his son Philip. He only cares about Philip as an extension of his line, his legacy, not his own not as his own person, not as his own identity, but as an extension of Marcos. There's a beautiful scene within the 7th episode of the season where Philip says, I'm my own person. I want to do my own thing. I want to stand up for the Free Navy. I want my own ship to prove myself. And Marcos says, you don't deserve that yet. Everyone in the belt is cheering my name, Marco Inaros, and he shows video feed of it. And he says, one day, when I die, when I pass on, you'll take on that mantle, and people will remember your name then.
Belters everywhere are chanting my name, not yours. You are nothing without me.
He's only going to let Philip have power when he is dead, and Philip basically becomes a continuation of him, his line, his lineage.
You are my heir, and one day you will lead the belt. After I'm gone.
And so for Marcos, everything is about him and centralizing his power. While he uses the argumentation and the ideology and sort of rhetoric of joining the belt, unifying the belt, he really is more about making his own power, consolidating his own power, about building his own power structure. He cares nothing for the morality of his actions or other people's lives. He is willing to sacrifice other people's lives in order to build up his own megalomaniacal power, if I can say words correctly. Which is honestly a really fascinating thing for that type of character, and makes perfect sense that he would be the character to enact this type of violence. That being said, it will ultimately get the goal of the OPA being recognized and sort of the Belters being recognized as their own political entity, especially with Earth and Mars on the wane in terms of galactic power, or sort of solar system power, I should say. So it's a fascinating moral quandary because, yes, morally he is wrong, morally he took it too far, but ultimately it will succeed in the goals that they want. And ultimately, what I'm finding interesting is that if you look at a character like Drummer, she makes much more sense to be the leader or the sort of person in charge of directing the movements of the Belters. Like I said already, she is already part of a polyamorous relationship. She sees Belters as her family. She is willing to sacrifice of herself, make decisions that she personally hates. She sided with Marco Inaros, and she hated that, but she did it because she knew it would keep her family, the Belters, safe. And so, yes, there is a hierarchy with her character. It's not completely anarchistic in the sense that there is no hierarchical power, but that the modest higher power that she holds, she gives to the community and looks to the community to hold. And so Drummer would make actually a much more ideological aligned leader with what the Belters believe and stand for, not Marco Inaros, in terms of representing their society. And also for me personally, as a leftist anarchist, makes sense to me. And so I just think that's sort of an interesting look into the mindset of Marco Inaros and sort of where he's at. What do you think, though, about The Expanse and the discussions that we can have around The Expanse? I'd love to hear all that down in the comments below. My hair kind of got off to the side there. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you enjoyed this discussion of The Expanse. I'd love to hear all your thoughts down in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget you can help me out on Patreon. Don't know why I said it like that, but I did. And I hope that you, as always, live long and prosper. Is it okay to end? What's like an Expanse thing? Belta Loda? That's better, I guess. Live long and prosper. Thank you so much to all of my patrons who are helping me achieve my dream of doing this full time. And especially a thank you to Catherine Lambeth, Miranda Janelle, Ashley Allen Bokikio, Eli Berg-Moss, Ashlyn Solstice, Michael D., Greg Gillum, Stephen Kleinard, Chamomile T., Ulysses the Pagan, Randy Thompson, Boyd and Mary Beth Earl, Wellington Marcus, Stephen Schuhart, Wayne Twitchell, Roar, Ish the Mad, Dominic Noble, Buttoneer, John Steele, Michael Beam, Jedi Indiana Jones, William Stewart, Gavin Robinson, Nathan Olson, BBD, Amanda Ronye Adanya, The Sir Spence, Jason Knott, Hannah F., Andrew Jorgensen, Maeve, Jasmine, Skylar Gray, Sean Piper, Andrew K., Bree Beecher, Subraxis, Jane Packard and Chloe Dollar, Nathan Steele, Tiffany Danger, Mari Neckar, Wendizzle Bizzle, Bush, W. Randy Eady, Mark the Edge, Piston Twisted Garage, Geek Filter, Gretchen Badger, Polly Mina, Jean Mithun, Sarah Bystam, Lysa, Din, Jacob Tovar, Celestial Dawn, Lily, Andrew Lamoureux, Raina C., Zone 1 Librarian, Michael Hardy, Corey Honkanen, and Vale Dunn. Thank you. You are all beautiful, beautiful people.